Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Everyday Faith, day number 13. We have a scripture today from 2 Samuel chapter 12. Here's what it says about King David. It says, Then David got up from the ground. He washed, anointed himself, changed his clothes, went to the Lord's house, and worshiped. A child might say, but I don't feel like going to church. And we might even agree. But is that what worship is? Do we only go, or do we go only when we feel like going, or because we are asking God to do something for us, so we go to find his good graces? No, we don't worship God to get something. We worship him because he has already given us everything. And when life falls in on us, like in this passage after the death of David's son, we get up, dust ourselves off, and worship God. Not because we feel like it, but because we know that his presence is the only way forward. Now, I'll kind of add to this a little bit, because I think on its own, this can seem kind of harsh. If you're not familiar with the story, it takes place, David has a child with a woman that he ends up marrying, but ultimately it was a childbirth in sin. He committed adultery and slept with a woman who was married to another man, kind of forced his way upon her, if you will, and not if you will, and it's literally what he did, forced his way on her and got her pregnant. And so this child, for several days after it was born, was in limbo, literally physically in limbo, and ultimately ended up passing. And it says that after the child passed, that David went and worshipped, that he got up, anointed himself, washed himself, and worshiped the Lord. And again, on the surface, between that or maybe how you read the devotion, that can seem kind of harsh. Just pick yourself up, dust yourself off. And I'm here to tell you, it's not that easy. This is 2019. In 2016, my wife and I lost the baby. And actually, we didn't lose the baby. We had to choose to terminate the pregnancy because it was an ectopic pregnancy, and the baby wasn't going to survive. And it had the potential, because it was trapped in fallopian tube, to cause damage, potentially life-threatening damage to my wife. And so the wise decision, the only decision really, was to terminate the pregnancy. But before we made that decision, there was this kind of weird limbo of 5 days where kind of these vitals that we were in, these indicators that we were watching would fluctuate from abnormal to normal. And so there was this kind of weird predicament of well, we can't rush to this decision because maybe there's a chance that things will self-regulate and correct. And so we got to wait, we got to stick it out and kind of see what happens. And over the course of those 5 days, we prayed like crazy. It was a baby we believe that God told us to try for. It was something we had been praying for several years. And so we were super excited about, this pregnancy, and we invited others to pray with us. And ultimately, those prayers didn't quote work, and the baby didn't live or pass through like it should have. And so we had to terminate the pregnancy, as I mentioned. And, it was really hard. It still is, thinking about that child and what we felt God had promised to us, and just kind of the failed sense of promise. But I remember after that decision, and after, we went where my wife had to go take a chemo shot at the cancer center to terminate the pregnancy, we just got in the car and we wept. We listened to worship music. We cried, we prayed, we worshiped. And it wasn't an easy thing to do. It was filled with questions, and doubts and frustrations and hurts and disappointment. But it was the right thing to do. And I think the reason I felt so compelled to share that part of our story, share that part of my life, is that I think it's easy, to write something like this or to read something like this and say, yeah, just dust yourself off and worship. It's the only way forward. And there's an aspect of that that's true. But just because it's true, it doesn't mean that we ignore or reject the feelings of hurt and disappointment and letdown. In fact, I think when you can engage the feelings of hurt, disappointment, and letdown, when you can deal with that struggle and wrestle with that tension, it actually leads you to a better place of worship, a truer space for worship. And so my hope and my prayer today is that if you're watching, if you're listening to this, that this would be an encouragement to you, that you would take heart. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what your journey is. I don't know where you're finding it difficult to worship. But I hope that today you can worship and choose to do so, knowing that even though the situation may suck, God is still good. So love you guys, and I'll be back with you tomorrow on Everyday Faith.